YouTube? It's your boy, the Gym Slasher, back at it again. You could have been anywhere in the world. You chose to be here with me, and I appreciate it. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hype me up. All that above, man. Give me unconditional love, and I'll give it right back. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The NBA, do they have a problem on their hands? Right. This is the first time in its infancy in terms of this rule of the 65 games, making somewhat of a controversy, if you will. This is one where the players, fans, pundits, myself, right? We're having this conversation of fairness. We're seeing a situation where an NBA player who is basically playing an honest game, an honest season, and Cade Cunningham. He's the point guard of the Detroit Pistons. They're first in the East as of this video. He's having a hell of a season. He is one of the best young players in the game. He's going to emerge as one of the top players overall in terms of his skill set, his entertainment value. That team is dangerous. I've said it in other videos. I do have them coming out of the East, even with his injury. And this is why we're going to get into that. But even with his injury, I still think it's reported that he'll still be able to make it into the playoffs and go on a deep run. Boston will have something to say about it, of course. But those are the two teams in the East that I feel that are just a slight above the rest. And that's with respect to New York Knicks. And I think they're the next level. But either way, this conversation and why we're having this is because of Cade Cunningham. He got injured a couple of weeks ago, I want to say. And they're basically going to put him out for the regular season. As a result, he misses the threshold of 65 games or more to make him eligible to receive All-NBA honors, first team, second team, third team, and as well as MVP honors. That can affect him because he doesn't meet that threshold. This hasn't quite hit. This is the first time that where you see a player that's clearly MVP level candidate, finalist, if you will. And right now, I have my 5 right now. I still put Cade Cunningham in there because, again, I yield to see who's next in that. But let's say Cade Cunningham, SGA, you got Joker involved in that. Jaylen Brown, who also, I believe, is nursing an injury as well. So keep an eye on that. And Luka Doncic. I think that those are your 5. If I was to put a finalist together, I will have them as my 5. Jalen Brunson is an honorable mention as well in that because I like to give him a shout out. He's a hell of a player as well. But with that being said, those would be my 5. The problem is that Cade Cunningham is paying the sins of his fathers. I said this in a video short, and I wanted to elaborate more on why I say that and why I said it in the video shorts, in my reels, and my IG. And we want to put a deeper dive into why that is what it is. So if we kind of go back in time a little bit and how we got to this point and why Cade Cunningham in this rule obviously affects a player like Cade Cunningham. Yesteryear, the videos I've asked before, and I'm one of millions who question the NBA over the last 5 to 8 years, if you will, of is the NBA trash, right? I did a video on that asking, and going through a deeper dive. So that video is in my feed. So feel free to go back and look at that. One of the topics we were talking about in that video was the availability of an NBA player, the lack of availability in marquee games, or you as a fan is going to a game and you want to see that 5-star, NBA player, and you look at the program or you check your phone, more or less, and you got your favorite 5-star player, megastar player on either side, or could potentially both teams. Now they're inactive, and undisclosed injury or a lower leg injury or lower body injury. They like to use as well, and that hurt the NBA, right? Not to mention that when you want to see him, on the networks, and should be a marquee game because of the franchises, and you're left to being disappointed because they're sitting at the end of the bench, and relative people rumbling that there's nothing wrong with them. They just didn't want to play. So that has gotten loud, over that course of 5 to 8 years now of players being inactive, not being available. Well, the issue with this in the NBA, like Major League Baseball, like the NFL, you have unions, like a lot of workplaces, non-entertainment, sports entertainments. In the real world, you got unions in certain places that are not privately funded and privately worked. Since you have unions, you also obviously going to have a management. So unions and management can obviously go head to head. They could disagree. They can go to the table of negotiations, some every 4 or 5 years. Some can vary from 2 to some can go every other year. Just kind of depends on what union and what business you're in. Well, because of this was happening so often and so much over the last 8 years, the management side knew the next time they were going to get into a collective bargaining agreement or, union negotiations, which was 2 years ago, this was on the forefront of what management ownership was going to be pushing, is some kind of limitation on, okay, if you're not going to show up to work, we're going to limit your opportunities at the major accolades. That one being the MVP, regular season MVP, and that being the All NBA, first team, second team, third team. The 65 games is not an arbitrary number. Management, along with the union, did the data, did the numbers, and marked that 65 as that threshold of the average player being able to play. So that's essentially, I'm not the greatest mathematician in the world, but that puts you right around 80% of games played. You got 82 regular season games, 65, do simple math. That puts you right around 17 games approximate in games missed that you can miss. I believe that if you pull the layer back a little bit, you also have to not only play, but I believe you have to play between 15 and 20 minutes. So you can't just, Jim Slasher is playing, he go through the line and come in, check in, play a little bit, and then 5 minutes into the game, then checks out and sit down. That's not that's not how that goes. It's not. It won't be counted. It'll be counted as a non-played game. So they put that in there to make sure you are fully playing. So I believe it's about 15. I think it's 20 minutes, give or take, 15 to 20 minutes within reason for you to play. So with that, those rules were put in place because that's what they believe the average basketball player should be able to play based on the numbers that they're saying. So 10 years ago and beyond that, the average player was playing 92%, or 92% of players were playing 65 games or more. After 10 years, so 2017, 2018, so forth and so forth, up until 2024, when the 2023, once the negotiation came in, NBA players, it dropped significantly, where right before the last year of negotiations in that 2023 season, players on that season was averaging 59% of players were actually playing 65 games or more. So you went from 92 games nearly 10 years ago to it almost came to head into the last 2023 season where only 59% of players were playing 65 games or more. So you're close to nearly half of your personnel, half of your employees couldn't make 65 games or more. That's a problem. Regardless of what side you're on, and I'm usually 99, 98% of the time, I'm a pro player. I'm a go for the players, but that's a hard number to ignore where almost half of your employees cannot make a game or cannot make 65 games or more. So the numbers spoke so loud where it gave so much credence for management to say, ownership to say, we got to have this as the threshold of you want MVP honors, you want all NBA honors, you need to make this number, right? Players got so egregious about this. It was hard for the union to not, they had to compromise to that because this is not the only thing that's negotiating. Obviously, they're negotiating money, right? And salary caps and you know and all of this. So management had leverage and they had a lot of it where they was willing to give you a little extra coins, but they wanted this. They wanted to guarantee that 65 game threshold would be part of the negotiation and part of the contract. Fast forward, now we're in 2026 season. You're seeing this kick in the last, this goes into that second season. And here you have a honest player playing an honest game, doing their thing. They get injured. You know, I don't want to say honestly get injured, but, you know, bad things occurred. Unfortunately, they get injured, they're hurt. And now because he had a couple other little nagging injuries earlier in the season, now this is taking them for that far out of the season, the later part of the season, adds up to that 17 total missed games. Now he leaves himself ineligible, which obviously sent shockwaves out throughout the NBA league and out for reporters and pundits, myself, people to, you know, kind of raise their arms like, dang, you know, because it's a good kid. It's a good young guy, means well, want to play, you know, but he physically can't. We all see that it was a legitimate injury. But unfortunately, Cade Cunningham is paying for the sins of his fathers. This is a lesson to be learned when you are going through or playing and as a team and you're just thinking about you and you're pushing and going against the grain in terms of rules and what they can be. These things can come around and be negotiated against. He had nothing to do with the past behind him that wasn't showing up for games or not wanting to come, but wanted full-time checks, wanted to work, wanted to get paid for all that, guaranteed contract, but they're not putting forth the effort. Now you're seeing that affect the young guys that are coming in. This is one of those situations where, you know, you need to do better. And I hate saying that to professional athletes, but you let this be a lesson. And I think this is going to be a loud lesson. And I think it's going to be another one of those knockout, drag out contract negotiations come next collective bargaining agreement where the players union is definitely going to, just like the management side, pinpointed on this absentee rule or unavailability rule. The players union is definitely going to target themselves in that. Good luck trying to get that changed because I don't see the ownership giving up on that or lowering that. There may be some couple little fine tuning, but to think that they're going to get rid of that 65 game rule, you out of your mind. It ain't happening. Once that has opened and they're seeing the data showing that players are now playing more, and now this happened, this couldn't have been any better than for management outside of Detroit, who could potentially had a MVP for a regular season. And I can't remember the last time Detroit Pistons had a regular season MVP winner, and so there's a bittersweet situation that's going on. But for everyone else outside of Detroit, in terms of ownership of other franchises, this is exactly what they want, because they're saying, look, we didn't want to not give him the MVP or not be part of it, but this is your doing. You did this. We didn't do this. We wanted you. We was paying you guys. We wanted you to be in. We wanted to be involved. But your peers were refusing to play when they were healthy, and this low management and tanking games and making up injuries just so you don't play and all this other stuff that was going on. Now you seeing this coming back and affecting some of these young guys who really trying to play the game and got love for the game, trying to give their all. And now they won't get those individual accolades. My man can't even beat Cade Cunningham, can't even get all NBA honors. And it's clear he was one of the better players, one of the better point guards.